message. Thank you for being here.
Well, first of all, let me say that it is very much an honor to be here. And I wanted to let you know that perhaps unbeknownst to you, I've actually been following this community, its progress and particular events and things for several years. Through my friend Bradley, I've been kind of keeping abreast of everything that's been happening. So it's like I very much enjoyed the idea of coming to finally speak to you, to finally address you and get to meet you in person. And so I'm particularly honored to be in your presence, and you've made me feel wonderfully welcome here today. So, the courage to change. Our topic. Okay, now the way that I work is I'm very, as I like to say, I'm very linearly challenged. Okay, so we're gonna go jump here and jump there a little bit, but trust me, it will come together. It will work out, it will come together, okay? So I'm inclined to examine, the words and phrases and such, and kind of to go deep into the meaning, because there's what I find that there's such integrity in our language that greater truth is there when you examine the word. You examine the etymology of a word, and then greater truth comes through. And so, so with this topic, I'm inclined to want to go back to the beginning, go back to the Judeo-Christian allegory of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, okay, and really examine a particular point. Now, I presume that most of you kind of know the story, kind of know what the deal was, all right? So, so here you had Adam and Eve in the garden, and then Satan makes his appearance, in the form of a snake, okay? So, cutting to the chase here, Satan tempts Adam and Eve by saying, by intonating, by telling them that they will be like God. Okay, this is like Genesis 3:5, where God doth know that, Satan says, for God doth know that in the day ye shall eat thereof, and your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods. Be as God. And so he tells them that. Now, this is where the sneaky part comes in, because he very cleverly intonates that they will be like God, thus inferring that they are not already God. You see? So they take the bait. And then they get caught up in this whole path of having to effort and having to change, or thinking they have to change, in order to be whom they are already. You see, it sends them on that, he basically sends them on that little rabbit hole, that trip, to try to become that which they are already. And so we call that confusion the fall of humanity. The fall, the trying to return to grace, trying to come back to whom we actually already are. So can you see how clever that was? You see how that worked? And so it's like so many of us are still trying to get back to whom we already are. And so it can be a very exhausting effort, this idea that we have to change in a particular way. So I think of it as a kind of a misunderstanding of the concept of change. You see, that we're not trying to add on from without, but become from within. And so it is this becoming our original selves. Now, here's where I'm going to jump now. So I'm going to look at the word courage, okay? The word courage, the root word of the word courage, is from the Latin word cur, C-U-R, cur. Cur means heart. It means things of the heart, pertaining to the heart. Courage means simply being in one's heart. Being in one's heart. And so it's like whenever I mean, you've all heard news stories of people who've done something particularly courageous, particularly heroic. Then they interview the hero here, and then they would ask him or her, well, you were amazing. This was a great demonstration of courage. And they almost invariably say, oh no, this is, I'm no hero. I'm no hero. I'm just doing what any person would do in that situation. I am not special. This is what they typically express. And so what they're showing is the state of simply being in one's heart, being utterly oneself, doing what we are designed to do, to be ourselves, so that only from without, looking from the outside in, that it looks like this great feat of courage, when in actuality they are simply being utterly themselves. And so it's like when we look at the great people in history, people like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Harry Hay, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, or Paramahansa Yogananda. These are individuals that if you really examine them, who they were, these were people that were utterly coming from their heart. They were absolutely coming from their center and from their heart. And it's very interesting. They were very genuine people, comfortable in their skin. And I am remembering this morning that I had a friend that had the honor of meeting and getting to kind of know Paramahansa Yogananda when he was young, when he was in college. And so, of course, I asked him, what was Paramahansa like? What was Yogananda like? And then he said that, it was like they tried to make him as this holy man, they with the portrait, and they make him this almost this Mount Rushmore type figure of this holy man. But he said that when you knew him, he was just very robust. He had an amazing sense of humor, and he was always laughing. He was always just happy and laughing, and you felt good around him. So he was absolutely energetic and vibrant and in his self and coming from his heart. You see, he had and so he had a possession of a great energy and a great courage, but he was coming graciously from his heart, his center. And this is very typical of the great individuals who have started the great traditions. You know, the great traditions that have come down to us throughout centuries. It's like they were very typically full-blown personalities. You see, they were very active, they were very dynamic, they were great souls who were uncompromisingly themselves, absolutely themselves, coming utterly from their heart. And that's where their power came from. That's where it came from. It came from them utterly being themselves, just full-blown personalities. Now, I have a couple of quotes here. This is by John C. Polanyi in a speech to the Empire Club of Canada in 1986. He said that he was a scientist. He said that intellectual courage is the quality that allows one to believe in one's judgment in the face of disappointment and widespread skepticism. Intellectual courage is even rarer than physical courage. Okay? And then I have another quote that you may recognize. It's by Marianne Williamson in her book, Return to Love, where she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So, once again, looking at words and words that we use and we are familiar with all the time, I think of the word crystal, to crystallize something. When we examine the root of that word, the actual root of that word is Christ. So, to be Christ, to crystallize, crystallization, becoming Christ-like. It's like when we look at what does that mean? What is the implication of that notion? That to crystallize, to simply crystallize, the root word being Christ. My interpretation of that is that to be a Christian, to be Christ-like, actually means to be utterly, uncompromisingly, essentially yourself, i.e., following the example of being utterly in one's power, utterly in the divinity, the perfect divinity of one's own heart. It has been said that Jesus Christ, was the great avatar who brought in, well, he was the avatar who brought in knowledge of the heart chakra. It was all about being utterly present, being utterly, uncompromisingly crystallized as one's self. And yes, he showed the courage by defying the powers of his time, but he was absolutely in that crystalline divinity within that spark within the heart, and he embodied it fully. So he functioned as that example, simply that example for which one can attune oneself and find that divinity, that crystal, your own Christ nature within. that spark of divinity. Okay, so what about change? What about change? Okay, the courage to change. Well, with your kind permission, as I reflect on it, I'm actually inclined to add 2 words to the topic. Okay. So we have the courage to change. I would add the 2 words, the world. The courage to change the world. And as I think about it, I think about it as the great task, which is to allow the collective dream to conform to the spark of the divine within your heart. I'll say that again in the great blues tradition. I'll say that one more time. Our great task is to allow the collective dream to conform to the spark of divine within your heart. It is essentially this quality of being your divine self, being in that current from source. You see, it is that act of taking charge. You see, and once again, it's like if we examine that term, which we use all the time, take charge, taking charge and such. It's actually a term in physics. It is literally taking charge, holding current, holding power, plugging in. It's like the great ritual of communion is one essentially where we are invited to plug in, to take charge, to embody and align with that Christ nature. But I think in actual reality, when we think about it, it is that we are invited to activate, to flip on the switch, activate that Christ nature within ourselves. And it's almost like it's almost too simple in the sense that, you know, and when I would reflect on it, I would just sort of marvel that, you mean that the whole message of Christianity is to be yourself? You know, and it's like, it's almost too simple. You know, as I was telling Brad last night, it's like bedevilingly simple. You see, but as we allow this collective dream to conform around the spark of the divine within our heart, I would suggest that as we do this, we would operate and navigate in our lives a little differently. I would, dare I say, much more courageously. much more powerfully, much more in charge, i.e. filled with charge. You see, it's very simple when you think about it, that you allow and appreciate and nurture that divinity within. So it is my wish that all of you, each to each other, simply witness and see the divinity within each other. Encourage it, i.e. reflect it in your heart. Encourage it. And cross-witness each other, that divinity. As the Hindus say, namaste. The God in me greets the God in you. Here, we create the communion and cohesion of community when we do this. And we have the courage to change, collectively, the courage to change the world. So, what I'd like you to do is to kind of be in tune with your divine essence. You can kind of relax, you can close your eyes if you like, but feel that spark of divinity within your heart. And allow that divinity to fill your entire body. Allow yourself to see it and feel it glow within you. And allow it and give it permission to fill, animate, and charge every aspect of your life. Give yourself permission to become your divine, essential, wonderful selves. And with that, take a deep breath and let it fill your entire life and being. And with that, I say bless you and namaste. Let me say first of all that I'm very, very grateful to be here, and it's a very great honor to be able to address you this morning. And I want to let you all know something here, that I've actually been following this community for a few years. Through my dear friend Bradley, who's been telling me how things have been developing and what he's been experiencing through this church, through this community. And so I feel like I already have kind of a connection, a certain amount of foreknowledge there. And so I was very anxious to finally sort of meet you in person and get that, and make my acquaintance to you. And I must say it's been very lovely. I've not been so warmly received, just coming into a community. So I give my thanks to you once again. And now, the courage to change, the topic. Now, a little bit of explanation here for explanation. I'm somewhat linearly challenged, so I'm going to kind of jump from here to there a little bit and delve into the words some. But I think you'll see it'll all come together. It'll all come together, and it'll make sense. It'll make sense to you. Okay. So when I look at this, the courage to change, immediately I'm very inspired to kind of go to like the beginning story, in particular, the Judeo-Christian allegory of the beginning, Adam and Eve in the garden. They kind of see, get a sense of where this courage to change, the ideas even come from. So, and I know that most of you really kind of know the story basically, but I'll just recap it for a second here. You have Adam and Eve in the garden, and they're in paradise. They're with God in total communion and everything, and they're there. And then in comes Satan. Okay, in the form of a snake. All right, so being very sneaky, he sort of tempts them basically, and how he does is very interesting. It's like in Genesis 5:3, it says, "For Satan, as the snake says, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof of the fruit, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods." So he's telling them that they're going to be like God. All right? Now, this is where the sneaky part comes in. Okay? What he is cleverly intonating in an underhanded sort of way is that they are not gods already. You see? So he makes them let go of that identification and then buy into a whole process of trying to become like, efforting, trying to be that which they already innately are, in that full holiness, in full divinity, in full communion, in the paradise. You see how clever that was, how sneaky that was, to sort of get them to try to go for something that they've already had, that was already there. There's already, they were already in the grace, in the fullness, in the holiness. And so it's like we see this in even how we think of the idea of change. The idea that we have to change, or how we work, how we kind of hold that in our mind, that it's trying to acquire something that we don't already have, or that we are not already innately, in our essence. You see how subtle that is. So it's like it's like where we get a lot of the idea of change, spiritual change, or the idea that we have to change, that we have to effort, that somehow we're not enough, and that we have to try to become, ironically, that which we already kind of are. You see, so this story implants the need for change, but a particular kind of change, perhaps even a misunderstanding of the idea of change. And so I'm inclined here to kind of delve into the idea of courage. Okay, so if we look at the word courage, we look at the root word. The root word is cur, which is the Latin. Cur is Latin for heart. So cur means pertaining to the heart, courage of the heart, being in the heart, being of your heart, being essentially yourself in your essence. So that when you are expressing courage, you're expressing qualities of your heart. You're in your heart. Now, if you think about like news stories of individuals that were designated as heroic, individuals who've done something especially heroic and courageous, and we look at them, and maybe the news reporter asking them, well, you showed such courage, like running into that building or helping this person or engaging in this situation. You showed extraordinary courage. And very typically, these individuals, they say, I'm no hero. I'm no hero. I didn't do anything extraordinary or different. I didn't do anything that anyone else wouldn't have done. You see, so it's like, where are they coming from with that? I believe that they are expressing the simple, natural heart nature. They didn't do anything extraordinary. They were simply being human, simply being themselves, simply being in their heart, and they just acted naturally. So they don't feel special. And in fact, they kind of shun that whole the whole special designation. They're simply in their heart. We see great courage from the outside looking in, but the experience of it is very very natural. So if we look at the individuals that are like the great people that we would recognize, people like the Mahatma Gandhis or Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa or Harry Hay or the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King or Paramahansa Yogananda. These were all individuals that were absolutely in their heart. They were utterly in their heart. And we see them as examples of great and extraordinary courage. But they were absolutely themselves, utterly themselves in their heart. And it's like, and very, very genuine. It's like, I had a friend who, when he was younger in college, actually got to know Paramahansa Yogananda, and then, he told me about this, and of course I asked, well, what was Paramahansa Yogananda like? And so he told me that, well, they're always trying to make him out to be like this great figure, this almost spiritual Mount Rushmore type of an individual, with the portrait and the book, boom, boom, and all of that. But he said, when you met him, he was very fun and energetic. He had a wonderful sense of humor and a wonderful laugh. And so he was utterly in his heart, utterly delightful, and very fun to be around. There was a lot of energy in that. He was so absolutely in his heart. And indeed, the individuals, when we look throughout history, we look at the individuals who have set forth the great traditions that have lasted hundreds of years. They were all very typically full-blown personalities, utterly themselves, utterly in their heart. And some of them, they were so absolutely uncompromisingly themselves that, some of them were kind of hard to be around, and some were fun, but they were absolutely, absolutely themselves, and completely genuine in their heart, and that was that distinguishing factor. Now, I have a few quotes, a couple of quotes here. One is by John C. Polanyi in a speech he gives to the Empire Club of Canada in 1986, and he's a scientist. And he says that intellectual courage is the quality that allows one to believe in one's judgment in the face of disappointment and widespread skepticism. Intellectual courage is even rarer than physical courage. And the other quote I have here is one you may have heard before. It's by Marianne Williamson. It's just a little snippet from her book, Return to Love. And it is, of course, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Now, I'm going to look again at some interesting words, because I like looking at words, because when you get to the root of a word, the root of a phrase, you find more truth and profundity. It's often very surprising, and and in our language we tend to sort of skim over things and miss a lot. So I like to delve in a little bit, and so I'm going to look at it's like the word crystallize or crystal. Okay, the root of these words is Christ. To crystallize, to be in the pure essence, to be utterly pure and truth, to be Christ-like, like being a crystal, being utterly the essence, the crystallized essence of one's self. Jesus Christ was the great avatar of the heart chakra. Okay, just as the Buddha was the avatar of the mind, calming the mind, the mind chakra, Christ came in for the heart, the utter freeing of the individual to find their own crystallization of their own being. And being in your heart and being yourself takes courage, you see. It is the courage to be with and hold that spark of divinity, to recognize and be with that spark of divinity, the utter crystallization of who you actually are. And so, as this is true, I'm inclined to ask the question, well, so, what about change? What about change? The courage to change, our topic. As I reflect on this, I was very much moved inclined to, with your kind permission, I wanted to add 2 more words to the topic. Okay, so we have the courage to change. I would add the 2 words, the world. The courage to change the world. And I see this as our great task, okay? The great task being to allow the collective dream to conform to the spark of the divine within your heart. And I feel moved to, again, to kind of repeat that, in the great blues tradition, that our great task is to allow the collective dream to conform to the spark of the divine within your heart. The courage to change the world. And as we are utterly in our hearts, I would suggest to you that if we operated and navigated in this mode, our lives would be different. Our lives would be different, and eventually our world would be different. And this is my wish for you. I have another quote here, and this quote, we don't know who said it. It's an anonymous quote, and the quote is that, "And now, with God's help, I will become myself." And again, it is my wish that we as a community, as people, see the divine, see the Christ, the crystallized divinity within each other's heart, to witness and cross-witness each other in the magnificence, in the divinity, and do as the Hindus say in the Sanskrit language, namaste. The God in me greets the God in you. And so I would invite you now at this point to begin to sort of quiet yourself, quiet your mind, and begin to feel the essence of that spark of divinity within the center of your heart. And as you feel that spark, you allow the glow of it to illuminate the internal spaces so that your entire body is filled with this light. And you give yourself permission to hold that light. Allow yourself to hold it, and that it is okay to glow with your divine spark. And as you feel that spark of divinity within, see it and imagine it filling and animating your entire life. This is where we we plug in and we take charge. Once again, look at the language. We take charge. We allow current from source to flow through and animate and activate our lives and ourselves and each other. Take a moment to feel the flow, feel the source, and feel that brilliant, that rather divine electric energy. And know that that is you, and that it is divine and good. And with that, I say bless you and thank you.